Like, I really wonder if Bitcoin cannot offer fundamental properties like privacy and especially censorship resistance, then you do take away what I think is a fundamental utility of Bitcoin. And I think there's a very real possibility that you'll get the Wile E. Coyote effect. Bitcoin will continue to exist for a while until he looks down and realize the actual utility of censorship resistance is gone. And once people realize that, it's gonna go to hell as well.
Thank you for doing this, sir. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
To start with, can you tell me your name and what you do?
Aaron Van Wirdum. I'm the editor-in-chief of Bitcoin Magazine and the author of the Genesis book.
Very, very nice. So you started covering Bitcoin as a journalist in 2013, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. From that time, can you tell me how your perspective on Bitcoin has changed from 2013 to now?
My own perspective,
Your own perspective,
on Bitcoin? I mean, I've learned a lot more. That's obvious.
Yeah.
I have a much deeper understanding. I mean, the Genesis book is a good example of that. Is the book is about the prehistory of Bitcoin, really.
Right.
It's about all the people and projects before Bitcoin that were working on digital cash projects or that were rethinking monetary economics.
Some of the cypherpunks as well.
Yeah, the cypherpunks is a big part of the book. But even before that, there were other digital cash projects, and you got Hayek, for example, is a big part of the book, how he wanted to denationalize money. So I think my main difference of what I learned over the years, to a large part, is what the book represents.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of, Bitcoin really didn't come out of nowhere. It's not this project that's, Satoshi Nakamoto just sort of dropped down from the heavens and
it was not a muse, and it just
no, it's actually an evolutionary step, you could say, or maybe a revolutionary step, but still, it's a step in a much longer process and history of ideas and technologies, and it all came together in Bitcoin. It's the book you can really see as a prequel. So if you take the Star Wars prequels, the original trilogy is great, but there's like a whole story before it. Well, I mean, I love the Star Wars prequels. Actually, I'm not one of the haters. I think they're great.
Well, that's a hot take.
Okay, the sequels, these suck, but the prequels I actually really like.
Right.
So yeah, there's like this whole other part of the story that makes the original story kind of make more sense. Well, I'm getting in controversial waters with the Star Wars, but I think something similar is true with Bitcoin. Like there's this whole story before it. And if you sort of understand that story, like I didn't in 2013, then I think Bitcoin itself also makes a lot more sense.
When did you start thinking about writing a book on this? At what point in your journey? So from 2013, I guess you started like accumulating knowledge.
Yeah.
And you probably like said, "Oh, that's an interesting fact," and then those things kind of grew.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to write a book, even as a kid. That was sort of, one day I want to be an author. So that part was always there. The idea for this specific book, The Prehistory of Bitcoin. Yeah, so, I mean, it's often when you open a Bitcoin book, even today, not counting mine, then there's often usually like this one page or like this short chapter about the prehistory of Bitcoin. Like, it's not like it's completely unknown. And that's also how I learned about it. Adam Back is still around, and everyone knows he's referenced in the white paper for creating Hashcash, which is the base proof of work mining. Yeah. So I had these tidbits of information, but I didn't really know that much about it, really. And I am a journalist, but I studied history as well. So I'm
oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, so I am also a historian. So, and the reason I wanted to study history is because I believe the best way to understand the present situation of anything, of the world, of a country, is to study the history. And then it all sort of makes sense. Like if you understand how we got here, then it makes sense. So I wanted to apply that same logic to Bitcoin. So I was working as a journalist, indeed, very much involved with the current news and the current developments. And both my original childhood dream of being an author and my background as a historian, and then finding these nuggets of there was something before Bitcoin that made it all kind of clear. But if you ask for a specific time, I don't really remember. It was probably just 2016 or so that I thought, I actually want to do this, and I'm gonna.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so at some point, let's just say it's 2016, you decide you're going to make it a project. And from that point to,
No, maybe later. Well, anyways, go
right,
on.
right, right. So how many, how, you started doing research on this, I guess, like rigorous research then?
Yeah. First, I wrote a couple of articles for Bitcoin Magazine on this topic. These articles are called the Genesis Files. So there's 5 of them. There's one on Chaum's eCash system. There's one on Adam Back's Hashcash. There's one on Szabo's BitGold. There's one on Wide-Eye's B-Money. And there's one on Helvini's ARPAO. And these 5 Genesis Files articles are also in adapted version chapters in the book, like expanded and adapted versions are in the book. Because that's sort of what the book is. The book, each chapter of the book follows a new project and person that sort of, got us to Bitcoin.
Right.
So these articles I wrote for Bitcoin Magazine, and I learned a lot by just studying that and diving into the cypherpunk archives and reading what Adam Back was writing
Oh
in the
man, that
90s,
sounds great. Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And yeah, that by the time I was doing that, I already knew that the end goal was to eventually turn it into a book. But yeah, that really solidified my this has to be an actual book.
Very, very cool. Um, and so, right, the main, your main, other than this idea that Bitcoin wasn't like some immaculately constructed thing, have your views on Bitcoin evolved over right the from the beginning? Like for example, a lot of people go through this common cycle of, oh, Bitcoin's great. Oh, look at all these shiny alts. Oh, I
Yeah.
got burned by them. Actually, I like Bitcoin a lot. Like this is a very common cycle. Did you follow anything like that as well, or was it always just Bitcoin?
Not really. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was pretty Bitcoin only from the start. I dabbled into altcoins a little bit at some point throughout 2014, but even then, for me, that was really I dabbled in altcoins because I thought maybe Bitcoin needs like a backup plan.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
maybe Bitcoin fails for some reason, and then we need a backup plan to continue the idea. And so I was in that time, ASICs were relatively new. So I was thinking maybe we need some sort of altcoin that is ASIC resistant. So at that time, Litecoin at
Right. I was
first
just about to say
had
that.
sort
Yeah.
of that promise that
Yeah.
it was ASIC resistant, and that fell apart
Yeah.
pretty quickly. And then you had Vertcoin, and they really promised that once an ASIC is developed, we'll hard fork to a new algorithm, so we're really ASIC resistant. Then I was kind of into that, but I was always into it as a plan B. I never was into like Bitcoin is not good enough. We need some other thing that's better than Bitcoin. This is going to be the new Bitcoin. I was never there. I was at most sort of maybe we need a plan B. But then even that idea I kind of let go because I kind of feel like if Bitcoin fails, that would be such a damaging event to the entire trust that everyone has in these types of currencies and these types of technologies that I think a plan B doesn't even isn't even going to do it. Like trust will just be obliterated. So I've more come to see Bitcoin as we have one shot to get it right. If there's something wrong with Bitcoin, we need to fix it rather than jump to some altcoin. That's not the way. We need to fix whatever problems Bitcoin has.
And you still think that today?
That's still my position
to
today.
say, if Bitcoin fails now, do you think it's just going to kind of eradicate this space, basically?
I mean, at the very least, it would throw it back a decade or so, and maybe if you throw it back a decade, then it would be so small again that actually governments can just destroy it if they want to.
Yeah,
I think one of the reasons Bitcoin made it this far is that because throughout a lot of these years, it was basically operating in sort of stealth mode, like governments weren't taking it seriously. But if Bitcoin would be or cryptocurrency would be thrown back to like 2011, now all of a sudden it's so small that they can just squeeze it out of existence. So, I still think probably this is our one shot to get it right. Whatever's wrong with it, we need to fix.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think you probably are right, because now everyone recognizes the power of this transformative powers of this technology, and governments would not.
I do think that there might still be room next to Bitcoin for other things, like things Bitcoin really cannot do. An example for me would be something like Monero. Monero has stronger privacy than Bitcoin, right? And sometimes you really need that. And as long as Bitcoin can't provide that, then maybe it makes sense to, buy some Monero, send your Monero to wherever you want to send it, and then that person just swaps it back to Bitcoin. Like maybe there's a future for that, but it's not an ideal future either. Ideally, Bitcoin would have that privacy, and you wouldn't need to swap in and out. So, I'm still very much in the sort of Bitcoin only kind of mindset.
Yeah, I understand that. I personally love Monero. I love it. I have kind of gotten, I guess, what do they call it? Black pilled on this though. I don't think governments will allow a privacy coin to exist. I just don't think that it will. I think Bitcoin will survive because it's not private, and I just it cedes too much power away for governments to really allow something like Monero. I mean, Monero can exist as it is now as a small cap thing.
Well, but so then do you see the future as, well, okay, but Monero can exist as a small cap?
Yeah, as long as
so the way I just described it, you think could be a viable future?
Well, I think if it starts pushing a lot of volume, right? I don't think governments are like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
We're not gonna.
I mean, we're already seeing a lot of that.
Yeah.
The question is to what extent they can push that through. If you don't need to go through a centralized exchange to get it.
Yeah.
But if mining is recently decentralized, then maybe they just cannot stop it.
Well,
right?
no, but then they can start to stop it on the Bitcoin side, right? They can say if your Bitcoin goes through, it touches Monero, that is censored. Any institution that wants to get into fiat or whatever, those Bitcoins are no longer acceptable.
Well, I would be very concerned about this future. That's not a future. In a way, I'm not even sure Bitcoin can survive that future if it doesn't have that utility. But this is really me thinking out loud right now.
Yeah.
Like, I really wonder if Bitcoin cannot offer fundamental properties like privacy and especially censorship resistant, which is basically what you're describing. Then you do take away what I think is a fundamental utility of Bitcoin. And I think there's a very real possibility that you'll get the Wile E. Coyote effects. Like, Bitcoin will continue to exist for a while until he looks down and realize the actual utility of censorship resistance is gone. And once people realize that, it's gonna go to hell as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that we need that in Bitcoin. Like we need that core. Just having a scarce supply, that's not enough.
Yeah.
It also needs to offer some real utility that nothing else, no other money can offer, like censorship resistance. I feel very strongly about that.
I guess I'm very pessimistic on governments ceding power. I don't know. Anyway, so I don't want to get derailed, but like I just think that as Bitcoin grows in importance, it'll have to deal more with the powers that be more and more. And I don't think Bitcoin ultimately will get compromised, but it will be put in a like a ring or like a fence kind of thing. I don't know, but
I mean, 300 years ago, people might have said, "I don't see government ceding power to the people, right? Democracy." And it still happens through big fights and wars, but in the end of the day, it happens. And I do foresee, in agreement with you, the only way we're gonna get there, it's not gonna be through sailing. Yeah. I do think this is gonna be a big battle, and so far it's been very easy. But I don't expect this to last.
Maybe here's where so this conversation is going a different direction, but to me it's interesting. So I'll just go a little further, and then we can swing back. But I grew up when the internet was coming around, and so I was there from the very early days, dial-up, and getting on message boards and ICP and all that kind of great stuff.
Sure.
Early days, everyone thought these grand visions of freedom and how, and I lived it. It was amazing. It was free. Nobody now looks back at the internet now thinks of the internet like that, right? Panopticon, control, and in a lot of ways, crypto is like fighting against that. I kind of feel like crypto maybe won't get that bad, but it'll go in that direction a little bit more.
That's what the cypherpunks were worried about, right? In the 90s, they were worried about that future of the internet, and that's why they started to build things like digital cash.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also things that ended up being Tor, for example. So even now, even though you're right for the most part, we still have pockets of privacy on the internet. At least we have pockets of privacy.
And I love Tor. I use Tor. I love Tor. Right. But even Tor is, it's kind of up in the air. How safe is it? There's a lot of ways to kind of get leaks from it.
It's probably an ongoing battle, right? It's
Yeah,
an
yeah,
arms race type of thing,
ongoing battle. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so super fascinating stuff. Thank you for doing that little tangent. I'm going to skip a couple questions just because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And I work in journalism and I'm new to it. And so I want to ask you a couple questions, maybe inside baseball. I'm sorry for my audience, but I just would like to know these things. Editor-in-chief of Bitcoin Magazine, arguably the most important Bitcoin or crypto-related publication in the world. That's my personal opinion. I was just wondering, what is a day in the life like for you? Like you wake up, what is your workflow like? What do you do?
Well, it differs a bit from day to day and from week to week. I would say the thing I like doing most is creating the print magazine. I think the print magazine is a very unique product that we make. Very, I've always had sort of a weak spot for print itself. It's like, it feels very real. And it's also kind of this time capsule thing where, 10 years later, people will still have the magazines or can look back and see what was important 10 years ago. It's nice that you have sort of this package that's, with different articles, but they can sort of have this overarching story. It's like there's something very nice about print magazines, I think. So that's a lot of my time, making the print magazine, editing it. So that's working on other people's articles, really writing some stuff for myself. And then at the same time, yeah, it's .com needs to keep flowing. .com is a very different type of approach, much more open in a way. Different people writing about different types of stuff. But yeah, the print magazine is a little bit my baby. I think that's where I can really create something that feels very much like I know, like not a present, but like I don't know, something you put out there.
Yeah, I would say
bundle of
it seems like a very planned,
right,
like meditated thing, right? Like because you have to plan so far in advance to do it, whereas a website is a lot more just put it up.
More fleeting, and yeah, it's a different dynamic for sure.
So do you have a lot of meetings every day? Do you have
I'm very much a meeting minimalist. So
okay,
I like having not too many meetings.
Yeah, I understand.
I like having impromptu meetings. Like if I need something, then I'll make a call. I mean, we all work remote, so we don't work in an office. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, sure, there are some meetings as well. Pretty much every day, at least one. At least one on average, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's working with different authors. It's working with other parts of the company. It's you gotta manage it and keep everyone sort of focused on somehow focused on creating one thing.
I mean, I can imagine. Okay, two more questions. Going to be really quick.
Okay.
The next one is like, it's a cliche in this space that there's so much happening and it happens so fast. And I know for me personally, writing news, it can be a little bit of a challenge to decide, okay, this is what I need to write about, right? Because you have so many choices.
Sure.
I was wondering,
especially nowadays,
right? Yeah. What is your thought process for deciding, like, oh, this is the thing that I need to write? Like, it's like what you're interested in, what the readers want. I mean, what's kind of the formula in your head that you go through?
For me, I want to focus on what I think is most important. It's kind of that simple. That's why I'm writing about Bitcoin in the first place, because I think it's the most important technology in the world right now. I think it has the potential to really change the world in a way that nothing else can. I mean, maybe the internet itself is more important than Bitcoin, but that's already been so developed. Well, Bitcoin, because it's still relatively young, there's still kind of a lot of directions it can go in, and there's still a lot to write about in that sense. So Bitcoin itself, that's I thought this seems like an incredibly important technology to me, and then within the Bitcoin space, there's also a lot of things to write about. But then also I like to focus on, okay, what do I find most important? So for example, now with the print magazine we're currently making, we're focusing on mining. The team is mining because I think mining centralization and potentially mining regulation, that's probably the most important topic right now. I
just had a conversation about that earlier today. The figure that I heard was 80% of blocks are created by 5 companies.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a very important topic that people need to be aware of and maybe try to solve or at least start talking about more. So that's why this print magazine is about that. Just because I thought, okay, this is the most important thing I can think of right now that we need to make. And over the years, that's always kind of been my, what do I think it's most important right now to focus on. That's been
Well,
my
it's worked. I
driver.
mean, like I said, Bitcoin Magazine is very, very important and closely followed.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Thank you, sir. From your place in this crypto news, Bitcoin news industry since 2013, how has it changed or developed? And what do you think is going to happen to our little corner of this industry moving forward?
Yeah, I mean the corner has gotten a lot bigger. That's the main change. You know, when I got involved, it was really um, it was just such a niche thing, and the people that would show up to conferences, it was like a specific type of people, not one type of people, but they were. It's hard to describe, but they were not the mainstream type of people. They were either like nerds or people that were on the fringe of society for some other reason.
Where would you put yourself in that?
Probably kind of a nerd,
Okay,
but I'm not
okay.
literally like a programmer or something
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
But yeah, more of a nerd. Um, and yeah, now over the years we've just seen it gone mainstream. You know, including with like mainstream celebrities, sports people, politicians, and yeah, I don't know how to put it, but like mainstream people more. Like it's much less of a niche. It's still a bit of a, it's still not mainstream, but you can definitely see the change in culture in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do you think are because I just in my short time here, I can already see like Bitcoin news, crypto news, dealing with a lot of the things that I saw like the New York Times deal with for the past couple decades, right? Like, and I wonder like where do you think that our little corner is going to go in the future?
What are you referring to?
Crypto news, like
Yeah.
the crypto news industry, right? So I was referring to things like where people get their news from. It comes from a lot more and more from like news aggregators, right? So it's not directly to the website.
Yeah.
AI now is starting to even cannibalize on that, and so
Right.
you're getting this kind of what's the business model, and the old models don't work.
I think one big change that has already been happening, but that I think will continue to happen is the internet in a broad sense kind of competes with institutions in a way, and it includes news institutions. So the New York Times that you mentioned is like a big institution, and maybe within the Bitcoin space, Bitcoin Magazine is kind of an institution. But I think actually the trend is more towards individual journalists. So you're not so much following a publication, but you're following specific people and see what they have to say. Sort of the Substack kind of model.
Yeah,
I think we're
yeah.
I think we're going to see more and more of that. So
Interesting.
I'm not saying institutions will disappear altogether,
New York Times is
but-
doing better than it ever has.
right? But I think their influence and power in a way diminishes in favor of the individual writers and authors and journalists.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time. I might
Thank
be
you.
wrong about the New York Times, by the way, but I appreciate it.
Okay.
Aaron, thank you. I just bought your book. I'm going to read this on the flight back. I love that it's paperback. Call me old-fashioned, but being on a plane with an actual book,
Yeah, that's
it brings me back, man.
There is also an audiobook if you like listening.
You mind signing it for me?
Yeah. Do you have any specific requests or just a signature in the name?
Anything
Signature, name, block height.
to David, and then you can say whatever you want. For example, to David, go F yourself. To David, transaction failed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Yes, to David, go F yourself. I love it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.